So here's a question that probably hits close to home. Why is it that we spend years in school learning math equations we'll never use, but nobody teaches us the actual rules of money? The stuff that determines whether we stay broke or build wealth. Personally, I had to figure this out the hard way after making some expensive mistakes early on, and I realized I wasn't alone. Most people were never given the financial playbook. That's why in today's video, I'm breaking down the 5 rules of money they never teach you in school, and by the end, you'll know exactly how to take control of your finances instead of letting money control you. Most people go through school being told that the key to financial success is simply getting a good job, earning a paycheck, and working hard. The problem is, nobody explains that if you spend first and save what's left, there will almost never be anything left to save. Lifestyle creep kicks in the moment that paycheck hits your account. You get excited, you feel like you've earned it, and then you start rewarding yourself. Maybe it's dinners out, the newest phone upgrade, or buying clothes just to keep up with trends. Before you realize it, your entire income has vanished into expenses. The underlying issue here is that the traditional mindset is backwards. Schools condition us to believe that savings is optional, something you do only if there's money left over. And because of that, most people never develop the habit of prioritizing their future over instant gratification. The solution to this is deceptively simple but incredibly powerful: pay yourself first. This means that before you buy anything, before you pay for entertainment, and even before you think about discretionary expenses, you automatically take a portion of your income and set it aside for savings and investments. This isn't about saving whatever happens to remain. It's about making saving the very first bill you pay each month. By doing this, you create a system where your wealth grows quietly in the background without you constantly worrying about whether you'll have anything left over. The beauty of this approach is that it flips the script. Instead of treating savings as an afterthought, you make it the priority. And when you structure your spending around what's left after saving, you force yourself to live within your means. Take, for example, a young professional earning $2,500 a month. If they wait until the end of the month to save, chances are the money will already be gone on rent, takeout, entertainment, and shopping. But if they automate just 20%, about $500 into a separate savings or investment account the moment they get paid, they adjust their lifestyle to fit the remaining $2,000. At first, this might feel restrictive, but within a few months, it becomes second nature. The pain of saving up front fades, and what grows instead is confidence, because they now see their account balance building month after month. Over a few years, that consistency adds up to a safety net, investment opportunities, and a sense of freedom that spending alone can't buy. Another real-world example is how I personally started. When I was just getting into real estate, I didn't have much money, but I set up an automatic transfer the moment my paycheck hit, even if it was only $50 or $100. At first, it felt like such a small amount it couldn't possibly make a difference. But those small amounts grew, and eventually that savings became the down payment on my first property. That property generated cash flow, which then funded the next investment, and suddenly I wasn't just working for money. Money was working for me. All of it started with the discipline of paying myself first. The key takeaway here is that financial freedom doesn't begin with making a massive income or waiting for the right time. It starts with the discipline of prioritizing your future every single time money comes in. By treating your savings as the first and most important bill you pay, you remove the temptation of spending it elsewhere and set yourself up for opportunities that others miss. One of the biggest financial traps people fall into is debt, and the problem is that we're never really taught how to distinguish between debt that can help us and debt that can quietly destroy our financial future. From the moment you turn 18, credit card companies, banks, and lenders start pushing offers at you, telling you how easy it is to qualify. The pitch sounds harmless: just swipe now, pay later, and enjoy life without waiting. But what nobody explains is how quickly those balances compound when you only make minimum payments. A $500,000 purchase with a high interest rate could take years to pay off and cost you double what you actually spent. And because schools never emphasize the long-term impact of bad debt, most people fall into the cycle of borrowing just to cover expenses or chasing rewards points without realizing they're getting buried under interest. The solution is to understand the difference between bad debt and good debt, and then take control of how you use it. Bad debt is any debt that doesn't generate income or increase your long-term financial position. Things like credit card balances, payday loans, or financing depreciating items like cars fall into this category. These not only drain your income through high interest rates, but they also prevent you from building wealth because your money is tied up servicing debt rather than being invested. Good debt, on the other hand, is money you borrow to acquire assets that grow in value or produce cash flow. For example, using a mortgage to buy a rental property that generates more in rent than your monthly payment can actually accelerate wealth building. The key is to avoid treating all debt as equal and instead use it strategically. For most people, the first step is to eliminate bad debt as quickly as possible while being cautious about what they take on in the future. Take the example of someone who finances a brand new car for $40,000 right after college because they feel like they deserve it. The car begins to depreciate the second it's driven off the lot, and within a year, it's worth significantly less. Yet the monthly payment of several $100s continues plus interest. That's bad debt because it doesn't bring in income and locks up cash that could have been saved or invested. Now compare that to someone who chooses a reliable used car for half the price and instead uses the savings to pay down credit card balances or start investing in index funds. Not only do they avoid the burden of unnecessary debt, but they also build assets that will appreciate and work in their favor over time. Another real-world example is how investors use good debt to build portfolios. Let's say an individual takes out a $150,000 mortgage to buy a property worth $200,000. They put down $50,000 of their own money, and the rent covers the mortgage payment plus expenses. That's leverage in action. The bank provides most of the money, the property generates income, and the owner benefits from appreciation over time. The difference between this and financing a lifestyle purchase is huge. One drains wealth while the other creates it. The important part is recognizing that debt is a tool, and like any tool, it can either build or destroy depending on how it's used. By being disciplined enough to avoid bad debt and intentional enough to leverage good debt, you create the foundation for financial security rather than living paycheck to paycheck while trying to stay ahead of bills. The problem most people face when it comes to money is that they only ever think about earning it through active work, trading their time for a paycheck. That's the model we're all taught in school. Study hard, get a good job, and work until retirement, but this mindset has a built-in flaw. Time is limited. No matter how hard you work, there are only so many hours in a day. Once your income relies solely on your effort, your growth has a ceiling. Worse, if something unexpected happens, like losing your job, getting sick, or needing to step back, you instantly cut off the only stream of income you have. This leaves people vulnerable and stuck in a cycle of working harder just to maintain their lifestyle, instead of building wealth that works for them even while they sleep. The solution is to make money work for you through investing. Instead of money being something you constantly chase, you turn it into an employee that works 24/7 without complaining, without taking sick days, and without asking for a raise. By consistently putting your savings into assets that generate returns, whether that's stocks, real estate, index funds, or even businesses, you create streams of income that continue to grow on their own. The earlier you start, the more powerful this becomes because of compounding. Compounding is when your returns start earning their own returns, snowballing your wealth over time. Even small amounts invested consistently can become life, changing over the course of a decade or two. The point is that you no longer rely on just your labor. Instead, your money grows in the background, giving you freedom and security. Take a simple example. Someone invests $200 a month starting at age 22, putting it into a low-cost index fund averaging a 7% annual return. By the time they're 42, they'll have invested $48,000 of their own money. But thanks to compounding, their account could be worth close to $100. If they keep going until they're 62, that account grows to nearly $500,000 without them doing anything beyond contributing consistently. Compare that to someone who waits until age 32 to start investing the same $200 a month. But 62, their account would be significantly smaller because they lost a full decade of compounding. The difference isn't how much they invested, but how long their money had to work for them. Another real-world example is real estate. Imagine someone buys a rental property with a mortgage. The tenants pay rent, which covers the mortgage and expenses, while the property itself appreciates in value over time. 10 years later, not only has the mortgage been paid down significantly by rental income, but the property is worth more, and the owner has built equity without working any extra hours. This is money working for you, because your wealth grows even when you're not directly putting in labor. This principle also shows up in dividend-paying stocks, where companies pay you a portion of their profits regularly. If you reinvest those dividends, you buy more shares, which then generate even more dividends. Over time, this creates a cycle where your investments fund themselves and grow faster. It's not about chasing quick wins or trying to time the market. It's about consistently putting your money into assets that build momentum. The takeaway is that relying only on earned income is one of the biggest financial risks you can take because it keeps you tied to your job indefinitely. By shifting your mindset to see money as a tool that can work for you through investing, you create long-term stability, independence, and opportunities that aren't available when you only focus on working harder. The problem with money that so many people run into is lifestyle inflation, or what's often called living paycheck to paycheck, even as their income grows. The moment someone gets a raise, they start thinking about upgrading their car, moving into a nicer apartment, or spending more on things they once thought were luxuries. The danger is that no matter how much more they earn, their expenses rise to match it, and they never actually feel wealthier. This cycle keeps people trapped in financial stress because they're constantly stretching their budget to the maximum instead of creating breathing room. Even high-income earners often end up broke because they confuse looking rich with being financially secure. It's not about how much money comes in, but how much you keep and what you do with it. The solution is to live below your means, not in a way that feels like punishment, but in a way that prioritizes financial freedom over appearances. Living below your means doesn't mean depriving yourself of everything enjoyable. It means being intentional with your spending and making sure that your money reflects your values and long-term goals instead of short-term impulses. When you consistently spend less than you earn, you create a surplus that can be directed toward savings, investments, and opportunities. That surplus is the gap that builds wealth. The discipline of holding back on unnecessary lifestyle upgrades is what allows your money to compound and give you choices later. By focusing on needs first, moderating wants, and setting clear financial priorities, you essentially buy yourself freedom and security rather than fleeting satisfaction. Consider someone who gets the $10,000 raise at work. The typical response is to immediately start thinking of bigger expenses, a nicer car, a larger apartment, or more frequent vacations. By the end of the year, that raise disappears into lifestyle creep, and they're still stressed about bills. On the other hand, if that same person chooses to keep their lifestyle nearly the same and channels most of the raise into savings or investments, they create a growing financial cushion. Over time, that cushion turns into the ability to handle emergencies, invest in opportunities, or even retire earlier. The difference isn't the amount they earn, but the choices they make with the extra income. Another example is someone who makes $60,000 a year but chooses to live on $40,000. They keep their housing modest, drive a used but reliable car, and focus on experiences rather than material upgrades. That extra $20,000 isn't wasted. It's funneled into maxing out retirement accounts, buying index funds, or saving for a down payment on a rental property. Within a few years, their financial situation looks completely different from someone making the same salary but living at the edge of their means. While their peers feel constant pressure to keep up with appearances, they quietly build wealth and security behind the scenes. This principle is something I learned firsthand. When I started making money in real estate, I resisted the temptation to splurge on cars or lifestyle upgrades. Instead, I kept my expenses low, often spending less than friends who earned half as much as I did. It didn't always feel exciting in the moment, but the money I saved and invested began to multiply. Eventually, those sacrifices created options most people only dream about: the ability to invest in bigger opportunities, the freedom to walk away from deals that didn't make sense, and the security of knowing I wasn't dependent on my next paycheck to survive. Living below your means is ultimately about long-term control. You either let your spending control you, or you control your spending. The choice to live modestly, even when you could afford more, creates the gap between income and expenses that becomes the engine for financial independence. The problem with relying on just one source of income is that it puts your entire financial life at risk. Most people depend solely on their job as their only paycheck, and while that might feel secure, it's actually the opposite. If that job disappears because of layoffs, health issues, or unexpected circumstances, everything collapses at once. Rent bills, debt payments, and daily living expenses all become immediate stressors. Even if the job itself feels stable, relying on one paycheck also limits growth, because you're capped by what your employer is willing to pay. You can only work so many hours in a week, and beyond that, there's no more room to expand. This is why so many people feel stuck. They're working hard, sometimes even working overtime, but they never feel like they're moving forward because all of their income depends on one source. The solution is to build multiple streams of income so that you're not dependent on just one. Think of it like a stool with one leg versus a stool with 3 or 4 legs. A one-legged stool falls the moment there's pressure, but a stool with multiple legs stands firm. The same concept applies to money. Having different streams of income means that even if one slows down or stops, the others can keep you afloat. These streams don't need to be massive to make a difference. Sometimes an extra few $100s a month from a side hustle, investment, or small business can completely change your financial stability. Over time, these smaller streams grow, and together they can surpass your main job, giving you both freedom and options. The goal isn't to hustle endlessly, but to create diversified flows of money that support each other and build long-term security. For example, imagine someone who works a full-time job making $50,000 a year. They decide to start a small side hustle offering freelance graphic design services on weekends. At first, it only brings in $300 a month, but that's $300 to $600 a year of additional income. Instead of spending it, they put it toward building an emergency fund and later into investments. A year later, they start selling digital products online, which adds another $200 a month. Now they have 2 additional income streams and their financial cushion is growing. If that person suddenly lost their job, it would still be stressful, but they wouldn't be starting from zero. They'd already have systems in place bringing in cash. That's the security multiple streams provide. Another example is through investing. Let's say someone consistently invests in dividend-paying stocks. Over time, those stocks generate quarterly payments, which act as passive income. Combine that with a small rental property where tenants pay monthly rent, and suddenly this person has 3 separate income streams: their job, dividends, and rental income. Each one alone might not seem life-changing at first, but together they create a safety net that grows stronger every year. When the job eventually ends, they aren't left stranded. They've built a foundation where money continues to flow in from different directions. Even personally, this concept is what allowed me to grow beyond just working for commissions in real estate. At first, real estate was my main source of income, but I reinvested profits into properties that generated cash flow, then into content creation, and eventually into businesses that made money independently of my time. What started as one stream turned into several, and that's what gave me stability. If one slowed down, the others balanced it out. The truth is, one paycheck will always feel limiting because it ties your security to a single point of failure. By creating multiple streams of income, you're not just making more money, you're building resilience. You're putting yourself in a position where you can handle setbacks without panic, take risks with confidence, and steadily grow your wealth from different directions. The problem with taxes is that most people don't understand them, and because of that, they end up paying more than they need to or missing out on opportunities to grow their wealth. Schools never teach how taxes actually work, so people step into adulthood with no idea how to manage deductions, credits, or tax-advantaged accounts. Instead, they just file once a year, accept whatever the government tells them they owe, and move on. The issue here is that taxes are often the single biggest expense someone will have in their lifetime, bigger than housing, food, or transportation. If you don't learn how to minimize that burden, you're giving away thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars that could have been invested, saved, or used to build assets. The solution is to educate yourself about how taxes impact your financial situation and learn to leverage the system in your favor. This doesn't mean doing anything shady or illegal. It means understanding the rules well enough to use them to your advantage, because the tax code is literally designed to incentivize certain behaviors. For example, governments reward people for saving for retirement, for investing in businesses, and for owning property. They offer deductions and credits as a way to encourage these actions. By using retirement accounts like IRAs or 41ks, you can reduce your taxable income while building wealth for the future. By taking advantage of business expenses, if you run a side hustle, you can lower your taxable profit legally. By understanding how long-term capital gains are taxed lower than ordinary income, you can plan your investments in a way that keeps more money in your pocket. The solution isn't about avoiding taxes altogether, but about being smart and intentional so you pay only what's required, not more. Take, for example, someone making $60,000 a year who contributes $6 into a tax-advantaged retirement account. By doing this, their taxable income drops to $54,000, which reduces the amount of taxes owed and allows that $6,000 into grow tax deferred until retirement. Without this knowledge, they might have kept all of that money in a regular checking account, where it not only loses value to inflation, but also does nothing to reduce their tax bill. Over decades, that one adjustment can mean tens of thousands of dollars in extra wealth. Another example is real estate. When you buy a rental property, you're able to deduct mortgage interest, property taxes, maintenance, and even depreciation, which often creates a situation where you pay little to no taxes on the rental income itself. Meanwhile, the property may be appreciating in value, and tenants are paying down the mortgage for you. Someone who doesn't understand this might think real estate is just about collecting rent and paying expenses, but those who know the tax advantages see it as a powerful wealth building tool. Even small side hustles can benefit. Imagine you start selling products online and earn $50 in profit. If you didn't treat it like a business, you'd owe taxes on the entire amount. But if you properly track expenses like supplies, equipment, and even part of your home office, your taxable income drops, and you keep more of what you earned. The difference isn't about making more money, but about understanding how to legally structure and report your income. The key is that taxes shouldn't be something you think about once a year in April. They should be part of your financial strategy all year round. By learning the basics, planning ahead, and leveraging the tools available, you can reduce one of your largest expenses and redirect that money toward building wealth instead of watching it disappear unnecessarily. So quick recap, we covered the 5 rules of money they never teach you in school. First, pay yourself first so you're always building savings before spending. Second, avoid bad debt and only use good debt strategically. Third, make your money work for you through investing and compounding. Fourth, live below your means so you create the gap that builds wealth. Fifth, build multiple streams of income so you're never dependent on just one paycheck. And finally, understand how taxes work so you keep more of what you earn. If you found this valuable, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and leave a comment down below with which rule you're going to start applying today. I always read your feedback. And if you want to take this even further, my next video is going to break down the biggest money mistakes students make in their 20s and how to avoid them. So stay tuned for that. It's going to connect perfectly with what we talked about today.